them up there? Are we going?
I'm expecting a TA check.
All right,
soon.
it is
Sound.
6:30. I'm going to
You're
call
not
this
expecting what?
study session of Livingston City Council to order. All the council here is here except for council members Grove and Wright, who cannot be here tonight. We got 2 items on the agenda tonight. We got, first up is Economic Partnership Incentive Agreement with RIG Mineral LLC regarding Mineral Place, and then we'll discussion on potential city support of a few ballot questions. So we'll just jump right into the Economic Partnership Incentive and for the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of council. We're very pleased to have this. This is the culmination of a lot of process at the staff with the developers team. And this is an important, I'll say, opportunity for Littleton. You're going to hear a lot, and we'll focus most of our time on the structure of this partnership that we're talking about. But I want to start for a minute, use a couple minutes to talk about the why, because we do get questions about why would the city want to share some of its potential tax revenue with this kind of development. And I just want to kind of lay some of that groundwork. This fulfills so many of the city's goals, so many of the council's priorities. You all saw just not too long ago, we completed our comprehensive economic development strategy, SEDS, trying to think of the acronym. And one of the big things that was identified there through both that study and also a retail study we had done was the need to have more retail for residents, for the people who live here, recapture the retail that's currently leaving Littleton. It's called leakage, and we want to recapture as much of that as we can so that our residents have the dining and the shopping that they want right here in town, and we can frankly capture that sales tax revenue. We also talk a lot these days about redeveloping Littleton, and we focus mostly on infrastructure, but we've talked also about some of the buildings in our downtown area. I want to point out that this is a major investment by the part of our development partners here. In redeveloping private sector, one of our largest parcels, 65 acres, so that we can have that in good shape for the next 50 years. Another goal that we had through our, well, I'll say that this, what you'll hear tonight has been crafted to meet really all of the points of the council's economic partnership incentive policy that you recently crafted. And so, you'll hear tonight about the benefits for our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, work they're doing to make sure that we restore and replace any trees that might have to come out there, and also just the work that they're doing to make sure this is a really nice development. We tend to focus on the largest tenant, the largest investor there, Costco, but it's I just want us all to think of and envision what this will be when it's completed with a couple different anchors and a real range, probably nine or so restaurants or other retail pad sites built out. Finally, I will point out that even in full year one, we think that this will be the largest sales tax generator for Littleton. So I'll leave all those numbers to our team, but as you can imagine, as the shopping center builds out there, it'll be twofold, threefold of probably any of our other sales tax generation parcels, communities that you might think of. So critical for us, for council, as we look to meeting all the goals that you've laid out. The reason the city would want to have a financial partnership here for a few years would really be to help us set the course for all the services that you've all talked about, that we've talked about for really the next level for Littleton. So with that, intro, I will turn it over to our interim economic development director, Brian Garner, and our other staffer, Jamie Kraut, and consultant partners, and they can go from here.
Yes, okay, thank you, Jim. So, yeah, you know me, and you know Jamie, and we're joined this evening by Andrea Knudsen with Economic and Planning Systems, who's done a few projects for the city over the last few years. So it's really an honor to be here to present this tonight. As Jim mentioned, it really is the culmination of many months worth of conversations and planning on the part of both the land use side and the economic incentive side as well. So I think with that, we'll go to the next slide. Again, this is just a conversation to entertain the economic partnership request incentive with Rig Mineral LLC. Mr. Grant Nelson represents that firm, and he is present with us tonight too, and may be available to answer questions as well.
So just a quick overview. This property is located 700 West Mineral. This is the former and now vacant aluminum facility. The developer is under contract for about 63 acres, 18 of which will not be included in the incentive request because that is Embry multifamily. So of those 45 acres, there will be 2 big box stores. One will be the Costco that we were speaking about. The next to the right of it on this image will be potentially a home improvement store, and then about 10 little commercial retail sites around the corner there. So included in this project, there will be a lot of much needed infrastructure upgrades, including the bike and ped safety that our city manager was speaking on. And then we will also have like landscaping, or they will have landscaping incorporated within that.
So diving just a little bit more into some of the benefits to the community as a result of the project. So we do expect that this project will deliver substantial revenue to the city with net sales tax estimated at about $3 million for the first 3 years, and then possibly exceeding $9 million estimated by year 10. As a reminder, the city's revenue is highly dependent on retail sales tax collection, which comprises currently about 84% of city revenues. So fairly substantial number there. As the project is primarily commercial and retail, the fiscal impact is significant even by conservative measures. Compared to alternative land uses on the site, so those being industrial, continued industrial use, which is the present zoning of the property, office or multifamily, so each of those were reviewed, and they would and likely have a negative fiscal impact to the city. And then finally, over 800 new jobs are anticipated with the development, and over 900 new trees would be planted, which is close to about 700 net new trees on the site. So some of the benefits to the community we wanted to touch on.
Before you run on, is that a typo there? You say approximately 9 million per year, and then in parentheses you said 3 million. So is it really 9 million over 3 years, or 9?
So $3 million a year, I think it's estimated at about 2.8 to 3 million for the first 3 years, and then by year 10, it would be $10 million net to the city.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Because we expect that after about year 7, while this proposed partnership deal could be up to 10 years long, we think that by about year 7 or 8, the city would be receiving the total revenue, so that's the 9 or 10 million.
So going right to the deal points, so again, it's a $29,500,000 sales tax share back. So that's the number. That's a maximum. And the way that would operate would be a 50% rebate on those collected sales tax. That's the 0.75, so the full city sales tax rate. And then the city would receive 100% of the use of property taxes, in addition to the development impact fees. 100% of those would be retained by the city. So the term of the deal is 10 years, maximum of 10 years. So as we just kind of mentioned there, so if it's paid back in 7, the reason for the 10 years is to give a little more runway for the deal in case it doesn't hit 7 years. But based on the data and what we're looking at right now, it looks like the share back would likely end in year year 7.
Would you explain a little bit on that rebate, how that works?
So those, so for each tenant that comes onto the site, they're going to pay their taxes, their sales taxes to the city, just as normal. They would remit those to the city. We collect those, and then on a monthly, it's up to Tiffany still, but on a monthly or quarterly basis, those taxes would be shared back to the applicant, so they kind of check back to the
They will
applicant.
be, okay.
And there'll be full reporting that goes along with that.
Yeah.
That's all baked into the agreement as
Yeah, okay.
well.
So there's no forward outright from the city, it's all retroactive.
I'm not sure if that came through the city or that came through the developer, who that came through.
It comes to the city, and the city rebates, basically rebates it to the developer.
Is that so that he can use bonds to build it? And then
Bonds are a separate part of the deal, is, separate source of his revenues.
There will be, yes, I think the sales tax back to the developer will help them to pay off their bonds.
So as you remember, we presented the Economic Partnership Incentive Policy back in August. This was unanimously adopted by City Council on August 6th. Shortly after that, the developer submitted a written application asking for financial support through the Retail Development Incentive Program. They were able to prove eligibility by addressing known retail leakage, as well as redeveloping areas in which they had intent of removing blight and improving the financial performance of the property. They were also able to prove or qualify through the 11 evaluation criteria within the policy, and then provide a special consideration about the historically difficult to develop or economically disadvantaged parcels.
Can you explain to me why this parcel is difficult to develop?
Yeah, so it is previously an industrial property, and in the location that it's in with the competition, that made the price point of the land very high, so to redevelop it for retail made it very difficult. Does that make sense?
Are we essentially every brownfield is difficult to develop? Is that what?
There,
I mean, it's not a greenfield.
Right.
it's significantly more difficult than
Yeah, it's an
greenfield,
infill,
but
it's an infill project that inherently makes it a little bit more difficult. A lot of that's just with the price tag on the property.
Just wonder if that criteria is gonna apply to every infill. Is it a very useful criteria if every development in the city fits that criteria?
Well, I think we've had quite a few developments that haven't applied for it because it hasn't been economically challenging, so I think.
Well, part of it is this is brand new policy, right? I'm very glad that we've clarified our policy, and I think that's good, but I think now that we've got policy, it's okay for us to evaluate whether we got the right policy, and this feels like a component that we don't have any greenfields, right? For all intents and purposes, and I understand we're differing on the definition of brownfield, but infill is what I'm using right now.
That's fine.
I saw you roll your eyes at me. But, if every property is gonna hit this criteria, then I'm not confident this is the right criteria for us.
I think some of the challenges too, as I've heard from the developer who's here, are the site costs, in theory, we could have been able to attract an industrial or commercial use that would use that same space, but I know that for years that wasn't happening. Lumen had been trying to, sell the property. So this use certainly has more benefit for the community, but it also, has extraordinary demo costs, for instance, for that building. Anyone who comes there is gonna have to do that. So many of the, I know, sites for these kinds of projects are greenfield sites. So they don't have those same challenges. So when a developer, comes in to make a project like this work, it's expensive.
But, I think it's expensive because it's in Littleton, and every property in Littleton's expensive because this is a fantastic location, right? There's not any cheap property in Littleton, so are you arguing that it would make more money for a developer if it was not retail space, if it was something else?
If I can,
One, I think you're combining criteria, and two, we're having a conversation about the criteria. These are the criteria we have. We don't need to debate the validity of the criteria right now, because that's what we have.
Well,
That's the policy we're discussing right now. We're not discussing, we already did discuss the,
I guess I'm trying to discuss whether this criteria carries much weight for my vote.
it's what's the criteria you have to evaluate it on.
Right, I think this is within my, my scope to have a conversation about.
I will add, this is in addition to the 11 criteria that they would have to meet just on the standard basis, so this goes above and beyond.
If I can, I'll touch on this question also during the slides that I prepared, and perhaps that might.
Great, thank you.
So taking a look at the retail mixed-use study that was performed by EPS just last year. That was finished in October of 2023. So some of the key takeaways, we're looking at the economic strengths and opportunities that we have in that landscape in the city. But some of the standout, I think, points of that study, the takeaways were what's called leakage, or retail dollars walking out the door of Littleton and going to other communities around us where they do have Costco and they do have some of those. One of the categories is general merchandise store category. That was identified as one of the larger sources of leakage in the city. And so the Costco coming in as part of this project significantly backfills that leakage. So that was just one additional thing we wanted to touch on, that we're using that retail and mixed-use study.
So we always want to make sure that the incentive requests align with not only what our departmental goals are, but just our citywide goals. We use these 4 different policies or strategies to kind of measure the alignment of the incentive requests versus where we want to be moving towards as a city. So you can kind of see the 4 different ones here: economic partnership incentive policy, the CEDS, the comprehensive plan, and Horizon 2027. We pulled out just a couple different touch points for each of these. But if you would like a deeper dive into that, you can go back into the incentive request. And most of these are touched on the 5th criteria.
And then the next part here, so the city retained the highly regarded services of, once again, economic planning systems to perform a fiscal impact analysis to validate the data and assumptions that were provided by the applicant, the developer, and provide us with an objective recommendation whether to enter this financial partnership. On the applicant side, on grant side, there was also a it's called a cost benefit analysis that was performed by another well-qualified but different company called Pioneer Development Company. Their task was really to forecast the proposed property and sales tax revenues, the proposed sales tax shareback agreements, really the ROI based on the terms of the partnership agreement. Those are the 2 primary sources, in addition to our team, of kind of the analysis of the request. And then out of that is really the forecast, really taking a look at the numbers. And on the left-hand side, the column is again EPS was their analysis, and on the right side is Pioneer Development Company. Different approach to kind of how they did their forecasting, but as you can see, the numbers kind of come in fairly close. I think EPS writing just a little bit more conservative than Pioneer. For the total taxable sales, but impressive numbers nonetheless. As you can see, 193 estimated in year 1 from EPS and 154 in year 1 from Pioneer. Each of those really culminated and concluded that the tax share back would end in year 7, just based on those projections. Each of them came in very close with the net fiscal impact to the city, so that's net, so that's after everything, as Jamie touched on earlier, so 2.8 in year 1 and exceeding 9 in year 10 for EPS. Again, a little bit more conservative maybe than Pioneer's analysis that gave us 13.8 in year 10 for the net fiscal impact. So again, big numbers. In either case, there's a recommendation to support the incentive request.
Can I ask a question while we're on this one? You have an apple on the page, so is this taking into account that we don't tax groceries?
It is, yeah. Those analyses each took that into account. And fuel sales too.
Because we
Okay,
tax,
that was my second question.
Yeah.
And then also, what were you saying?
we tax bananas.
Oh, I'm sorry, and pharmacy, correct, yeah.
Oh, we don't. And then is that also down to the difference, and maybe it's a Tiffany question, of things that are ordered online versus in-store, and also prepared food versus non-prepared?
Prepared foods are accounted for in the
Yeah.
analysis.
So the store system will be precise enough to get down to that? Okay. And then what was the other one I asked?
They know what you bought 5 years ago.
I know what you're gonna buy in 5 months.
Online sales,
Through Costco even?
not from that property, but we get
It's all
We would.
remitted, online remitted.
Through a different
existing, yeah.
category, gotcha.
The delivery or online sales are taxed at the location of delivery. So
Your mailbox.
they're not fulfilled.
So yeah, we're going back to kind of what Brian said, our city manager, referred to earlier. This is going to be an enormous impact on, the sales tax generation or the revenue that we're bringing into the city, even from year one. As you can see, estimated taxable sales, and again, this is more of a conservative rate that EPS, gave to us, is 193 million in year one, all the way to upwards of 300 million in year 10. The city expenditures for city services, they can vary between 78,000 to 230,000 from each year. So a good average is about 166,000 or across those 10 years. One thing to note for this is that this impacts those departments, mostly such as Public Works or the Police Department with high variability. And then the big one here is the positive net fiscal impact. You can see 2.8 million year one. I want, I guess, the takeaway from this slide to be this is net, so after rebate dollars have been paid to developers, after we've taken out the cannibalization for existing retailers, and after the city expenditures, our take home is at 2.8 million in year one, and then 9.1 in year 10. This is simply stating that this partnership will be beneficial from the first year of operating.
With the city services, is that just on the site or does additional wear and tear to, all of Mineral and Broadway and County Line and places like that?
It's comprehensive of what it takes the city to serve the site. And so it's all the roadways and it's all of the departments. It's a comprehensive analysis of dollars out to be able to accommodate this project.
So a good example would be our city attorney. It's gonna take him
allocates a share.
5 hours a week or whatever to spend on this,
Exactly. All of the departments and part
50
of,
hours a week.
what we're doing is,
Prosecuting all the hooligans that hang out at Costco, is that what you said? The Costco hooligans?
so we built a fiscal model for the city of Littleton approximately 2 years ago, and it was all of the revenues coming in, all of the expenditures going out, and then we apportion it between residential and commercial, and then ultimately allocate it per square foot or per dwelling unit. So for each new dwelling unit that comes in, what is the city's costs they incur, what are the revenues that are generated for each square
So
foot?
this was just generic as square footage of commercial development, not
True.
specific to Costco
True.
or other. I'm just thinking,
On the expense side.
So that's
Pardon
what,
me.
$1.6 million of city services spent servicing this site.
Right, right.
And what is a mile of roadway is $1 million, and if all the additional traffic on Mineral causes having to repair it earlier, I mean, that's already right there is your full allotment of city services.
True. On the expenditure side, it's a typical retail square foot. On the revenue side, it's very dialed into the specific uses that are proposed. But I think your point is that we're going to have more impacts from this particular use.
Correct, that was my point.
Defrayed slightly by upfront development impact fees that'll be paid, and so based on the square footage estimated, it'd be 1.7, I believe, back to the city. So, and then the developer's also constructing the offsite, on-site improvements obviously, but the offsites as well to make, the streets function as they should to access the site.
I mean, I was gonna get to the impact fees are definitely gonna be paid and account for some of that, but it seemed like the services estimator is a little low. I'm not saying it definitely comes up to being more than what's coming in, but the fact that it wasn't, one's specific to the development and one's not, kind of.
For those listening, it's not 1.6 million, it's 166 million. 166,000.
Thousand. Per year across
Per
10
year,
years,
right.
so that's
That's
$1.6
true.
million
You're
over
right,
10
you're
years
right,
is what I
you're
said.
Sorry,
Good math.
I heard other people muttering in my ear.
No, so 1.6 million over 10 years.
You're right, you're right. I stand somewhat corrected.
Fully corrected, Robert.
So just to kind of finish up this slide here, I think it's important to note that it's a win-win-win. So the developer is obviously looking for this financial support, which is a win for him. The city is excited about the additional sales tax revenue. And then the community gets access to this general merchandise store, and as well as with the city creating more sales tax revenue, we'll be able to provide more services for our community.
Jamie, I think people are excited about Costco. Do we have any additional information about other, you said there's possible home improvement, any other information about other tenants that will be there?
Might be a
Yeah, that'd be a
Question
question
to the
for Grant, if he has any others to announce. I don't believe he does at this time, but.
How's the interest, nobody can announce.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we've touched on the subject of justification a few times already, but again, so, fully understand, this is a large incentive request. And, just leaning into that, what we said before, primarily due to the high cost of the land, that really scales this deal, and makes what the request is what it is. And so combined with the cost of the land, the site remediation, and the improvements to the infrastructure on and off site, they all have large price tags that lead to, what is the financial gap here, and that's what this all comes down to, is identifying the financial gap. And so our job over the last few months was to really shake this out, with the help of the consultants, both Andrew and his team, and the consultant that Grant retained as well for those services. And so just, one more reminder, there's no upfront out-of-cost money coming from the city to do this deal. And also really important, it's up to the applicant to perform, to receive the sales tax share back, to occur, as quickly as possible in the short amount of time as possible. It benefits the city, but it benefits the applicant as well, right? He wants to get his share back paid in as little time as possible. So just to reiterate that, and then I guess on the cost of the land, some of what we looked at was, why does it cost so much? I mean, part of it's locations in the South Metro. Part of it is it has industrial zoning. It's kind of a unicorn site, surrounded by, built out area of the South Metro area, which prices are a little bit higher down here. And it's a contiguous 63-acre parcel. That just doesn't come along very often. So add to that amazing demographics, and that's kind of what you have. So.
Brian, you reviewed the on-site improvements as the trees, the drainage, the bike and ped,
Putting all the utilities in.
the utilities. What are the off-site improvements?
So, added turn lanes, improvements to the signalization at Mineral and Broadway. Grant, you have some added lane width, sidewalk widening, drainage improvements.
2 new signals, one at the
2 new
lobby,
signals,
one at
okay.
South Park Place.
So the off-site is really the street that leads to the site.
The streets, the network. Yeah.
I know we're talking about Costco. Should we expect a similar presentation for the big box store that might move in?
So we're not actually talking about Costco,
I
we're talking
guess
about the
we're not
site
talking about
inside
Costco.
this
We're talking
is,
about
It's the whole site.
The whole site,
A
okay.
whole retail site
Okay.
that we're talking about.
Yeah, so that part is already included
Okay,
in all
gotcha.
of these numbers.
So the numbers are based on Costco being
Gotcha.
the anchor. If, Costco weren't the anchor, the numbers would obviously change with that there.
So two large warehouse anchors are anticipated, one of them being Costco, and then likely to be about 10 development pad sites on the perimeters of the property, yeah.
And along those lines, I don't know who got an email from a community member today, talking about a subsidy for Costco. This isn't money going to Costco at all. Costco's still paying their full sales tax. It's us basically incentivizing the developer to basically sign and get Costco to come here, build it all out and do that. And then it's more of an enticement. I know it comes across as, oh, we're giving up $29.5 million, but right now, what's the sales tax revenue coming off the site? Can you remind me?
3 million?
Right now, there's
Oh,
three.
oh,
Right now, sorry.
There is, where is that?
Zero.
Yes,
They had zeros in there.
manufactured in that place. Tiffany was grandma like. Yeah, so it's to incentivize basically 29 million and a half to come in here, for the first couple of years and then get more later.
So, this really is kind of a true example of what a public-private partnership can look like. I think, we've already discussed the fact that, this is gonna bring in an increase in sales tax revenue. But we definitely need to look into the fact that this will allow for staff to further council's initiatives. This will allow for us to further meet our community's needs, our residents and our businesses included in that. And funds from this development seep into all sorts of different programs. So funding for this can go into give back to small business programs. Funding for this can give back to our residents in many of different ways. So we will be recommending entering into an economic partnership incentive agreement with the developer as proposed.
Questions? Or do you have anything to say?
I think you have additional information.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we have one more presentation from Andrew, and we can certainly field questions along the way.
All right, thank you. So we've got about 24 slides. We'll move quick. There's some overlap between the staff's presentation and what's here, but we go into a little bit more detail on a few key questions. So I'm Andrew Knutson, Managing Director of the Denver Office of Economic and Planning Systems. We have worked with Littleton for a number of years. You know us. For anyone out in participating through television tonight, here's our 8 lines of business, and this touches on several, primarily around public-private partnerships, economic development, and fiscal and economic impact analysis. In terms of project background, here's the goal of what we're doing, the focus of what we're doing is these 3 elements on the next slide. We are trying to understand the economic impact, the net revenue, and the costs that will be incurred. The second is to take that rubric, apply it to the proposed site plan from RIG. And then the third is to net out the actual dollars that the city can expect to receive. This puts a picture around your question in terms of what the site entails. We have 2 large format retailers, one with a name, one to be determined, and quite a bit of ancillary or pad sites on the perimeter. So that's what we're looking at. You can see the square footage is 160,000 is Costco, 145. We anticipate home improvement and around 140 for perimeter pads. Summary of findings on the next slide. We've got 5 things here. Developer's request for $29.5 million is justified primarily due to the high land cost associated with the project, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The incentives, we anticipate revenues to the city ranging from $2.8 million in year 1 up to $9.2 million in year 10. Number 3, we think it'll take 7 years to reach the 29.5 requested by the developer. Number 4, We've got a specific slide on this at the end of our slide deck. If the city were to entertain uses, industrial, office, or multifamily, all of them are net negative. So any of the alternatives are not only as positive, they're actually negative. And then 5 draws from work that EPS has done for the city in the past. And we have a table at the very end of the memo. We can walk through that if that's helpful. But the city, as strong as the demographics are in Littleton, Colorado, the retail doesn't mirror the strength of the demographics. And particularly in this category of general merchandise, there's a tremendous amount of leakage, as was mentioned earlier. And this is particularly targeted at a store category in which the city is experiencing a lot of leakage and will stop that leakage. So it fits particularly well into the needs identified in that strategy. The incentive request, 50%, 10 years or 29.5. On the next slide, you can see the calculations on the right. This is simple in terms of revenues, net expenditure. And there's different ways to calculate a but for. The project will not proceed but for. And in this case, this is a static but for, very simple, revenues less expenditures is a gap. There's also time series, and Grant may talk about that a little bit, a dynamic pro forma. 2 different ways. This is one way to do it, 28.3 gap analysis. The bullet,
Excuse
please.
me, might this be the place just to point out, or point up the difference between the
Sure.
28.4?
Sure. So building on your, the point you're making here, the request is for 29.5. EPS identified a gap of 28.4. The difference is really attributed to whether we're looking at this in a static way, dollars all nominal, dollars in, dollars out the same year, or if we're looking at it in a dynamic way with a pro forma that accounts for revenues to occur over, say, a 10-year period. We typically do but-for analyses, both static and dynamic, and triangulate into an average between the two. In this, we just did static. The developer, Grant, did dynamic with cash-on-cash metric based on a 9-year cash flow. So a 1% difference in our book is a home run. We think anytime you can triangulate 2 different sources and get within 1%, we're there. And the rest of, if it's within 1%, we've proven the need. The project in this case is large scale, $90 million. So 1% of 90 million is not insignificant. That is the different approaches in terms of methodology and the explanation for why there is a difference of 1%. And we can certainly do a little more analysis in terms of the dynamic approach if that's of any interest to the council. But Grant, I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, or how far you want to go on this topic.
Does the council have any questions?
We can have Grant come up after your,
Yeah, we've got a few more
yeah,
slides.
he can come up after.
Okay. The other crux of the conversation, we think, is in this lower left bullet. Another Costco anchored projects, Crown Point and Parker, University Village in Colorado Springs. Land was purchased for $266 and $476 per square foot respectively. And here, the land is 1861. So
That's the whole site though, not just the Costco.
true.
Costco's is definitely a lot less. Per square foot, yeah, for the purchase, because what are they getting, 16 acres?
This is from a developer's perspective, not so much a tenant perspective.
I know.
And in
What Grant had?
both of these cases, in Colorado Springs and Parker, it's the large-scale development that includes the Costco anchor plus all.
Okay, so that's not just the Costco.
This is apples to apples.
Okay.
Right. And greenfield development, in these situations, you can get land that's not too expensive. It requires a tremendous amount of infrastructure around it to serve it, but you're not, and I think the key point here is, do you have to take down buildings? And if you are, that's pretty expensive dirt, because you're buying the dirt. But to get to dirt, you have to buy buildings and take them down. So, and I would suggest that in the retail study that we were working on with staff, there are, notwithstanding Littleton's very strong demographics, there are some tired retail corridors. And the city may very well want to incentivize the redevelopment of some of these corridors. Because here again, we've got expensive dirt because you're buying it with improvements on it that require demolition and upscale. And so many cities do find it's worth their investment to help turn properties that are otherwise have too high a barrier to entry for development to come in and actually acquire and start and redevelop it without some incentive. So it very well may serve Littleton to look at this same standard across a broader scale. The other thing is that due to this delta you can see between bullet 2 and bullet 3, there is a significant cost in terms of acquiring the land and developing the land. And we were skeptical. I will say EPS was skeptical of a $30 million request. We did a tremendous amount of research on Costco deals around the Western US, looking at comps. And we were able to find comps that went back as far as the original land acquisition. And it really, that delta crystallized the basis for the request. We'll move a little quicker through the rest of it. This here represents quite a bit of, these are the model inputs, and there's a little bit of tug of war behind each one of these cells. And this is where EPS is a little bit more conservative than perhaps the development team in terms of sales transfer or cannibalization.
That's the net new.
Exactly. So we've got total sales, typical sales per square foot applied to the site plan to generate total sales by our 3 different types: Costco, a home improvement anchor, and ancillary. What percent will be service-based? These are the H&R blocks that seem to be in every retail center everywhere. They generate no retail sales tax, and the hair salons, nails, what have you.
Can't tell you how many massage parlors there are in my neighborhood, which is weird.
Yeah, they are proliferating everywhere.
There.
It's true. So service-based, we used to say 20%, that's gone up, 25 is reasonable. So that's in the ancillary, that will not generate any sales tax. Percent taxable, what percent of the goods sold in a given location are subject to tax? Groceries, not taxable. Gas sales, not taxable. Pharmacy, not taxable. The 60%, particularly in Littleton, where it's going to skew towards electronics and some of the hard goods, more so than some of the softer submarkets around the metro area. That number should be generally on the higher side. We were on a phone call with Costco representatives, and they said, depending on what's taxable and what's not, food not being taxable, 55 to 60 is a good range. So 60% is verified with Costco, lower than what you might initially anticipate, but it's a lot of gas. Gas represents 20%-ish of sales at a Costco. Home improvement, all of that is taxable. Ancillary, we still will have, notwithstanding the service base, not everything sold within those stores are actually taxable. Then, third layer of scrutiny is what's net new. We think that 10% of the sales at a Costco will come from shoppers that would otherwise have bought something similar at a Littleton store and will then just weave it into a Costco trip. So 10% of Costco sales are sales transfers or cannibalized sales. Home improvement, Littleton does well in home improvement. There are 3 home improvement stores in Littleton today. We will see quite a bit of cannibalization from home improvement. Ancillary, it's a little tough to tell on ancillary, but we think there will be, whether it's fast food of any nature or whether, I think there will be a lot of food and beverage in the ancillary. Many of those sales will come from other operations in Littleton today, notwithstanding the fact that they might be new. Nevertheless, it's the same category. Obviously, the fact of the matter is we are sitting immediately north of a tremendous amount of expenditure potential with very generally an understored environment, and that's Highlands Ranch. So we are expecting a lot of dollars to come up to this location for all of these uses, balancing the sales transfers within the city and sales inflows from outside the city. A lot of time has gone into these numbers in each one. We did, as you can see in the memo, a geographic layout, especially on home improvement, with a radius around each store, figuring out where sales are coming from, both within the city and outside the city. At any rate, I probably hit this one plenty if we want to go on to the next slide. But that's where EPS is accurate, but perhaps on the conservative side in terms of understanding what the city's upside looks like. We've included 4 slides here with a fair amount of numbers. And one of the main message we want to convey to the public in general is that there has been a tremendous amount of scrutiny. The rigor applied to understanding sales flows and what's happening on the project has been very detailed, and that is what is shown here. This is a 10-year forecast of construction, and you can see Costco, 160,000 square feet in year 1, year 2, 145,000 square feet of the second large format retailer, and the rest of the ancillary comes on incrementally over time. So this is build out of the site. On the next slide, we have what is taxable, and these factors from the previous table are applied here in the model, then applied to the floor area to generate taxable sales. If you look on the bottom line, we have total sales tax, 7.2 in the first year, 11.4 in the last year, with a split between City of Littleton and RIG. On the next slide, this is what is net new, and this is where we account for the cannibalization. The 7.2 in year 2026 total sales and the 11.4 at the end haven't changed. What's different, and if you want to hit the next slide, is the material in this box right here, which accounts for all of those factors applied to cannibalization or sales transfer. And you can see where the City of Littleton stands relative to RIG. You can also see on the bottom part the cumulative revenues, and in year 2032 or year 7, we do hit that 29.5 million to RIG, with 100% of the balance flowing to the city in the latter part of that year and every year thereafter.
What's pad 5 not have?
Pad 5 is a bank, and so that's anticipated to be outside.
Thank you.
And there's another couple
Theoretically
pads.
a bank.
Yes.
Right,
yes,
right.
yes. And there's another couple pads where we do anticipate some office. So that's where the 50% is. But, sure. Other revenues, Jamie touched on these, but we have property tax, general revenue, and use tax accounted for. Very straightforward, relatively small, especially in comparison to sales tax. The City of Littleton has a 2 mil property tax, thus these are not really significant. They're generally reflect on the general revenues, fees, fines, and forfeitures. Expenditures these are drawn from the fiscal model that EPS built for the town. Bill, recognizing your point, Mayor, in terms of the factors that were used, but we do have a estimate of the expenditures the city will incur based on the number of employees in the large format as well as the ancillary retail. We've got 2 more slides, and one is the total net fiscal impact, and this does provide a roll-up of all of the previous tables into the different sources of revenue the city can anticipate: sales tax, property tax, general revenue, the expenditures based on the employment forecast for the retail, the net ongoing fiscal impact is shown in the dark gray. In the first year, it's 2.7 million. By the latter year, and this is a 2% escalation annually based on a reflection of inflation, but by 2035, that should be net 9.1 million coming into the City of Littleton.
Is there also impact fees that are not?
In our world, impact fees are net neutral because they're dollars in to cover costs identified in the study that was used to establish those impact fees.
Okay.
So those expenditures are spoken for, if you will. These are fungible dollars, and as part of the general fund, you can place them wherever you would like. Impact fees are tied up.
Put them in the lake.
You can't go in the lake, they're literally tied up. That's the point of the impact fee.
So
Thank you
then.
for laughing, Steve, I appreciate that.
Net fiscal impact, looking at alternative land uses, we did load the model with industrial flex in scenario 1, office in scenario 2, residential in scenario 3. And you can see the net fiscal impact on the right side of this table, negative 54,000, negative 368, and negative 766,000. So that concludes our presentation. We are happy to answer questions.
I mean, the question on that last slide I was gonna have is, so that means an option 4 would be other commercial, and I think, you know, as Patrick talked about, the anchor here is Costco, that's what's driving all this. Are there any other commercial, you know, retail sales tax generators nationwide that, you know, would even necessarily approach to what Costco does?
I mean, there are, not of this scale, no
Sam's.
one can give
Sam's right next door.
this level of sales per square feet across this floor plate. There are boutique stores, there's certainly some.
That's what I mean, on the same scale, not, you know, we can't have a 165,000 square foot Apple store, yeah, that's.
Exactly.
Any questions?
Yeah. So I was actually just, I'll say it out loud because I had a question and I had talked with the city attorney earlier about this, but my question actually, the root of it was around the bid bonding. And essentially, if we have a $28 million shortfall and we already went out to bond through the bid to make up an $18 million component of the revenue, why not essentially extend that? And I was reminded that it can only go towards infrastructure improvements, the bid funding essentially. Hence, I'm assuming, just asking you now for confirmation, that there was not necessarily extra margin within the bonding process that could have been essentially going to reduce the amount of gap funding necessary.
It's a great question, and I think it does warrant asking Grant and getting confirmation.
Grab a chair and just come up here.
Come up to
Grant.
the stage. But you do have to bring your own chairs.
He doesn't want to sit between us.
There's
I'm a final.
refreshments.
There's refreshments.
Thank you. Grant Nelson, Republic Investment Group, thank you for having me here tonight. To answer your question, so the BID is going to issue bonds based on two revenue streams. One is a 25 mil addition that would be placed on the property, and then the second is a various PIF revenue stream. So Costco is at 0.25%, the other anchor is at 1%, and the pads are at 2%. So the fee will be charged at the register in different amounts based on where, you know, which piece of property you're on. So you combine the mill revenue and the PIF revenue, and the maximum amount that we've been able to get Piper Sandler, who's marketing the bonds for us, is 22 million, of which 18,155,000 will be available for infrastructure work.
Okay, and that's essentially the site work in your expenditure
Yeah.
line item, is that's the revenue that's gonna be going there?
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't cover all of it, but it covers a big chunk of it, which really helps us to draw down the amount that we're here requesting.
Sure,
For those listening at home, what's a PIF?
Private infrastructure fee. So
Sales tax, essentially.
it's a fee, it's not a tax.
It fell into the
Paid on your
trap.
sales.
Carolyn will tell
Looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, but it's not a duck.
It's a pig.
It's a
But
pig. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that answered my first question, thank you. My second one actually did have something to do with brownfield sites, but it is not necessarily calling your site a brownfield because that has a very specific environmental definition.
Sure.
And I wanted to actually ask because you have in here a contingency, soft costs, including the contingency of around 8 million. We're buffering the gap shortfall by about 1 million. I'm gonna get to my environmental question here in a second, but the contingency in that soft cost line item, what is going into those soft costs and how much of that is actually contingency, essentially construction overruns and the like?
I believe it's about 10% contingency on hard costs, 5% on soft costs.
Okay.
The soft cost contingency is based on, the soft cost, the consultants, the different pieces that come at you.
Sure.
The hard cost is basically in case we run into something while taking down the building. So the BID has bid out the work.
Okay.
Saunders was awarded they're the general contractor. They brought the bids back. We got them back about a week and a half ago. So we feel confident that the numbers came in actually very close to what we estimated here.
Okay.
But there's a contingency in case that while taking down the building, or the floor of the building's estimated to be 8 inches, and if it's 14 inches, then there's
That's
a
a
lot
whole
more work
different
to
animal.
to
Yeah.
undertake.
So 10% on hard costs is what's built into that line item in terms of contingencies. Okay, and to that last point about like unexpected site conditions and stuff like that, you don't ever really know what you're getting into until you crack the egg. Obviously you've done your due diligence and you've had inspections and the like, but sometimes you don't realize that there is a thing until there's a thing, right? So how much of that environmental investigation inspection has been performed? And I'm asking this to make sure that there's sufficient buffer in our package that we're offering to allow for the work to continue proceeding forward, even if you were to encounter, for example, underground storage tanks, chlorinated solvent leaks, asbestos.
You're scared of
I know.
Steve.
Sorry, but the risk to the city is that things grind to a halt unless we have sufficient contingency in the package to allow you to continue proceed.
Sure, we had a company called Langen do a full site assessment. And I think they took 800 samples inside the building. They did a very extensive assessment, so we knew what we were getting into. There's a few more assessments. We couldn't shut down the boilers while they're still operational that we'll have to do after we start. But really the biggest environmental consideration is the towers that are out there were sprayed with an asbestos. It's kind of like a asphalt and an asbestos, kind of like a pickup bed liner.
Mastic, yeah.
Yeah, the mastic stuff, and they sprayed it on the outside, so Saunders demolition contractor will go take each of those panels off individually and then dispose of them in the following the state guidelines.
Okay.
Besides that, the building was surprisingly clean. When you stare at that building, does make you a little nervous.
Having never been in, I had no idea what stuff was in there, but it's good to know that, your contractor is taking the proper precautions with regards to the asbestos remediation. I think that's, especially for the community, construction's gonna be going on for a decent amount of time. Just letting your GC know that that is something of concern and care for the community, especially considering the hazard.
Sure, Saunders is our general contractor. They're a Colorado-based company. I've used them numerous times. They're very good at what they do, and they had a competitive bid process through the BID, two different things. But each one of the contractors that they had was very qualified. And the biggest time that will take is taking down those towers, and then they're gonna bring a crusher on site. A lot of that building is cement. They're gonna have to crush the cement walls that are basically there and then dispose of the crushed aggregate, you call it, at the end of it. So the fines, so.
Yeah, cool. I'm comfortable with the amount of contingency that's built to do it. I don't think it's excessive, and therefore I don't think the city is making up an excessive amount of contingency in the soft cost analysis. So I'm comfortable with the package as we're presenting it. Thanks, appreciate it.
Other questions, Council?
Well, if we have other questions, I realize we're talking about incentives, but if there's other questions, is there ever another time we have Grant and us together?
I'm assuming he'll be here
Do you want to come hang out?
next week for the actual approval of it.
I'll be here on the first.
On specific
I mean, I don't-
format.
Can we talk real quick about this whale, since we've had multiple questions about it? I don't know what you could in a nutshell share about why we are not saving that, but.
We aren't doing anything with it.
Why you're not saving it?
Happy to. In redevelopment, which is what this is, 63 acres actually gets chewed up pretty quick. And so we're redeveloping the site, and one of the actually largest expenses is demolition of the building and demolition of the existing site work. And then the existing site was built in the like late 60s, early 70s. And it didn't follow necessarily the current drainage studies, the current drainage codes. So we actually have to regrade the entire site. Everybody will regrade their entire site, we'll regrade our entire site. When you regrade, you have to take all the trees out to regrade. You can't grade around them. And so the swale, while it was considered, we came to a, because you have to regrade it, we're actually cutting in that area as a cut fill. Cut is where you take dirt out, and fill's where you bring dirt in. Very self-explanatory, but the cut fill on the site is fairly complicated to get it to be usable. The trees, I think there's 287 trees on site today. I think we're bringing in 900 trees. I think there's 600 net new trees that will be on site at full build out. I sent Jim and Jared an email on this earlier. I had our landscape architect work with Costco and Embry's landscape architect. I think there's also a fee in lieu of $69,500 that we pay to the city for taking out certain trees. The city then can go purchase other trees, so that accounted for about another 200 trees. So there's, I think, 800 net new trees in the city through the redevelopment. So, and we're gonna install all of the landscape, at least along Mineral and South Park Terrace, day one. And irrigated in the BID will maintain that so that it will mature faster. I know we're putting in smaller trees than were out there. There's also a number of trees out there that are, the ash trees are not great trees, and they become sick, and they are not long-lasting trees. So hopefully the trees we put out there will create a little biodiversity and create a healthier tree environment in Littleton.
So there will be different trees?
Different trees, yeah.
Those trees that are out there now are ash trees, the ones that are in the swale, so they're at high risk these days.
And I
As long as we're
appreciated
losing
you,
non-functional turf grass that has to be mowed.
There's that too.
you also mentioned to me when we asked about this, that the whole thing is gonna be landscaped together as opposed to each site.
Exactly, yeah.
Which-
I think code allows for each site to be landscaped, so each of those 10 pads as they came in along Mineral and along South Park Terrace could have been individually landscaped. You sell the lot and the guy goes out and builds it themselves. We made the executive decision to do it all at once so that it looked better, so that it would mature at the same time, so it would feel better as time goes on. So, editorial comment, Andrew and EPS, I've worked with them before. They're very good at what they do. By nature, Andrew is an economist. He's very conservative as a developer. I'm maybe not as much as a conservative guy. So we have discussions and debates about sales and what retailers will do. And I would tell you that.
You're right, but.
I think the Costco here, part of the reason that Costco's coming here is this is such a great site and the economics are so good and it's a hole in the market for them. I think this is gonna be a really, really good store for them. I think it will do over 300 million within the first 2 years and grow quickly. They don't grow at 2% either, no offense. Like we've talked about these things, Andrew and I have debated these and Brian and I have
You
debated
guys
these.
are really fun to hang out with.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
they're very fun debates. It'll grow at a much more rapid pace than 2%. 8 to 10%, at least in the first few years, is what these retailers typically do, especially in an area where it's an infill area, so.
But it seems that even at 2%, it's still a pretty good deal.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like there's as much of a dead spot for home improvement stores. Look at Andrew's face.
Yeah, that's true.
We have a dearth of trampoline parks.
I would disagree considerably. Andy Bittner is with me here tonight. He's our broker. The Placer AI data that we have now that we use, the Home Depot in Highlands Ranch is at 2, almost 3 times capacity. It's their average, their store does over 100 million in sales, and average Home Depot does 40. So that store is overrun. And so I think there is an ability to take pressure off of it by adding a home improvement. It's to the south. Everybody in Littleton either has to cross Santa Fe, or you have to cross C-470, or cross I-25 to get to a home improvement store of significant size. Not the Ace is a great retailer. I love Ace because I can actually find people that help me where I can't in other stores, but I think home improvement would do very well here. And even if it's not home improvement, if it's another anchor, there is a big hole in the market here. Highlands Ranch, as Andrew indicated earlier, there's a lot of, they just didn't design it for enough retail. I think we can agree on that.
And I would assume a large format home improvement store wouldn't be interested in the site if it didn't make sense for them.
They're very particular, yes, and unless it makes sense for them, they don't come unless it makes sense for them, yes.
So we had a community meeting, Andrea and I, this last week, and there were a lot of concerns about the development, and I think that, you know, in my mind, the biggest concern is about traffic. And so, and I know, I remember reading the impact study, and I think the impact study, you know, was compared the traffic levels to what the traffic levels were when the Lumen site was an office building and had those people in it, which is probably not where we would ever go back to. So, I mean, what compared to what was part of the challenge with the traffic study? But I guess I'd be interested in a little bit of a conversation around why we think the traffic is not gonna be problematic for this new site. I think, which, in my mind, I just pitched you a big softball, so I'm hoping you're ready for it, so.
Yeah, I, you know, 20 or 30 years of doing this, traffic's always a consideration, right? And every conversation goes into it ahead of time. The difference in retail is that it spreads traffic throughout the day. So the Lumen, I'm dating myself, but the old Fred Flintstone, when they came down it slid down the tail in the morning, they slid down tail at night, and they all left at the exact same time, and they caused a traffic jam. That's the Lumen site in a nutshell, right? You go to the DTC, and at 4:15 to 5 o'clock, you can't leave because it's gridlocked because everyone's leaving at the same time. Retail, it has different trips throughout the day. People come in the morning, they come in the afternoon, they come in the evening. The improvements that we're making as well, the signals, and the disbursement of traffic, that you have South Park Terrace, you have Broadway, you have County Line, you have Lucent Boulevard, you have C470, you have Santa Fe. You have different ways of getting at this site. One of the reasons Costco likes this is because there's so many multiple points of access that people don't have to just come on one road. You know, part of the frustration in Park Meadows is you have to be on the loop road inside the mall. There's one entrance, there's a right in, there's an entrance, and then it's the egress that's hard in that site. I go behind the Best Buy now to escape, and that's not great for any of us. So this site really provides lots and lots of different access points. And our traffic engineer, who I think is the best in the state.
Other than Shane.
Other than Shane, but we can't hire municipal employees, you know, just the private side. Curtis can, you know, if there's citizens that have questions, I'm happy to bring Curtis to neighborhood meetings and really trying to alleviate people's concerns.
And where will
We can refer back to our previous council
use
meeting
two
where
on
we
Saturday.
discussed the development and the traffic planning and the studies that went into it too.
And where will the trucks go?
Trucks come in behind the site, and Costco's very regimented about having them done before they open. They don't want trucks on site while they're open, because it just creates more traffic. And a lot of the Costco trucks are actually smaller box trucks. It's not the large, you know, the grocery stores have the massive, you know, 56 and 58-foot trucks. Costco's, a lot of their deliveries are smaller box trucks that come in between like 6 in the morning and 10 in the morning.
Can we expect the same traffic pattern for trucks for the other tenants, or?
Once I know those other tenants, we can model for that, but it's really the general merchandise and the groceries that have the daily deliveries and the high frequency of deliveries. So home improvement, for instance, doesn't have as many high frequency deliveries because they just don't turn their inventory as fast as other retailers, as the general merchandise retailers.
Great, thank you. I'd say, Jim, during our public meeting, the other conversation that I think we spent a lot of time on was around required parking spaces and whether we are wasting kind of space by having too many required parking spaces. And for this development, I think the horse has left the barn. But I think that might be a topic that at least our constituents would be interested in us thinking about in the future. And they just use this as an, so it's not a question for you.
Particularly is, I think Costco overparks, and it's not.
Well, that's right, and
It's
that's.
not us with the requirement, it's Costco itself.
Well, I think, right, so the only,
Because they're wider, yeah.
but the tool we have, I guess I feel like I'm expressing to the city manager that our constituents want to make sure that over parking is not a product of our code,
Yeah.
And so, and maybe, I don't know about Councilwoman Peters, but maybe we could have a conversation about that in the future.
Although someone did approach me afterwards and said they never go to that Park Meadows one because of parking issues.
There's not enough parking.
Fully agree with that.
Yeah.
Hence that being overbuilt.
Right, well, I don't think Park Meadows is a,
Good example of anything.
well, yeah, I mean, we all don't wanna be Park Meadows, like, that's not what we wanna be, so. Thank you for
I have
answering
two
the
more.
questions.
There's really been a turn in 30 years of doing this from parking minimums to parking maximums. And you just have to make sure you're meeting the maximums to attract the retailers. But we agree, I mean, there's nothing I hate more than useless real estate, right? Seeing,
As a developer, yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
And my
It
assumption,
bothers me more than anyone.
and I'm sure it does, but my assumption is that there will also be a bike rack.
There will be bike racks, there'll be EV charging, there'll be, the retailers really do try and adjust to the market, and make sure they're providing what their customers want. So,
Thank you. I mean, my only question really is why, and this is for the council, is why 10 years if we think it's gonna be zeroed out at 8 years? Why would we go for
Let's
the 10 years?
10 years or.
Right,
Right. I think if we set it 8 years and then there's a massive recession for some reason, he's putting it in there to say it's a buffer for himself to say, hey, if there's a recession and something goes wrong and I don't recoup it in 8 years and I need 10 years, I'm assuming that's why he has it there.
yeah, COVID taught us a lot about, sales blips and what the government can do to shut you down if if there's something bad going on and it lasts for a prolonged period of time. Just taking the page out of Andrew's conservative book, so.
great. Thank you. I appreciate letting me ask those questions.
Councilmember Peters, you have two more?
Yes, I'll quick. You can be as quick as you need to. Is there any way to push back on us getting a little bit more quality architecture of a Costco or those other pads? Or does it have to look like Costco?
thinking mid-modern, century?
That's what it already looks like. Is there any way to get more interesting, like?
Really, that's what you think that building frame could.
So this is Costco's advanced architecture. This is they came with what they believe is a really high level of architecture. Jim and I spoke about before the meeting. I mean, I did a store in Montana, and Costco's are metal buildings. And they can dress them up like they are here to make them look nice. In other places, they just put up metal building, right? And so I think the level of architecture we got out of Costco is as good as we can get. The Embry architecture, I think, is very nice. And what we're encouraging our other retailers to do is borrow from some of what Embry's done and really draw some of that architecture into the rest of the project, so.
Go ahead, yeah. So the architecture will be like Quincy and Wadsworth?
For the Costco?
Yeah.
They just built one off of Pena Boulevard up by DIA,
Right.
and that's the most, that's the example that I think they've used, so.
Is there
You're
ever
gonna
been a
notice a
co-
Costco, you're not gonna confuse it with some modern art building.
No.
Has there ever been a Costco close?
I think they've relocated, I'm not sure they've ever closed one. So,
You would be everyone's worst
Talk
nightmare if
about
this
such
site
things.
fails. Okay, last thing, is there any talk or could there be of solar on the rooftop?
I can ask Costco about it. I know that the retailers really look at that. Walmart employs a lot of solar. And I know Home Depot's looked at it. I don't know that Costco has because it's a sloped roof. And again, it's the metal building, so it doesn't really allow for, or doesn't give solar a lot of opportunity, but we can ask them about it. They'll do anything to make this a more,
Let's ask.
sustainable store. I mean, they build these for 50 years. They try and, their specs, the last one I did was in Northern Colorado in Tinmouth, and we did the site work for them, where here they're paying for their own site work. And, I mean, their pavement spec, you can land a 747 on. All of their concrete is reinforced concrete. They really build these things to last. So if solar was something they thought was really beneficial to them, they'd be employing it, but I'll ask Jennifer and Perry and Terry about it.
It's like Vegas, they don't have any windows in there, you lose sense of time.
Spend tons of money.
You're
really
really
selling
selling
One
this.
in, one exit.
Any other questions? I had one other question. So this incentive package is also connected to the Embry site too, correct? Or is
No.
that just because you already sold that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, Embry's standalone, we're selling them the real estate. And so then, this is just for the 45 acres of commercial, so.
Well, my point is, if the incentive package, have you completed the sale with Embry already?
No.
That's my point, is if it,
Okay.
let's just say we don't approve it, because part of your revenue stream for this was the sale of Embry. If you have that delta of $29.5 million, because for some reason, I'm not getting this from the sense from the council, but we say, no, we're not interested in this, that would probably fall through then.
It would, yeah.
That's
It
my
would
point, is
collapse
the Embry
that,
side would
yes.
fall through.
Thank you, sorry, I didn't understand the question, yes.
I know, I
They're
know
all
it's not part of
interconnected.
the commercial incentive package, but the whole 60
Site
some
incentive,
acres,
yeah.
the additional housing would not be there if this incentive package was not approved. That's-
Yes, no, I will be fully torturing my attorneys by having a closing where we buy from Lumen, sell to Costco and sell to Embry all in the same day. So there'll be lots of swear words with my name associated with them.
Does Costco
More than
own their
already.
land?
They will own their own land, yes, and they'll own the gas and the anchor site they'll own, so,
You know, the parking.
yep, they'll own the parking.
I'm good. Okay, so it sounds like we're good with having this for your next regular meeting?
See you on the 1st.
Thank you. Other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank
That
you.
was great, thank you, Mr. Grant.
Thank you.
And congrats to economic development too.
Yeah, that's some solid economic developing.
Mission accomplished.
Pretty solid there.
Setting a bar that's gonna be hard to replicate.
My Las Vegas comment, so I guess I'll leave it for you.
Yeah, thank you for doing your service as interim. I
It's
hope-
very
I hope you're,
energy efficient, I'm just saying.
in a good place with where we're going, but I really appreciate your work.
Warehouses, unicorns.
Any, other
You're
than
okay
in
with
the
it?
documents or the council meeting where we discuss it, do we actually have traffic studies or anything we're supposed to somewhere relatively accessible?
We'll be asking for waivers for.
We got one more agenda item here, so.
We got that truck out there.
Make it something that's
Jim, who's driving that new fancy Silverado out there? I don't know, that's your, you don't know, it's a Littleton vehicle.
All right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Mike, we have 3 of them. Next up, we have ID 24-230, a discussion of potential city council support of several ballot questions. Would be our ballot question 3B, Arapahoe County ballot question 1A, Jefferson County ballot question 1A, and the RTD issue 7A. And so this is just, so the city attorney will give us an overview of why this is an option for us to, in the past, the council has either supported or opposed various issues on the ballot to let our constituents kind of know where we stand, and this is just one more way to help provide some information. And I know there's at least, 14 statewide questions, and then county questions, several county questions, and our own question that we'll look at. And I think these 4 are the ones that make sense for us to have some sort of opinion on.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, as mentioned, there's a number of ballot issues coming up on the ballot for our voters in November. And aside from our own, and I guess I'll start with our own, as council knows, back on August 20th, City Council recommended an additional 4% tax rate on the retail sale of marijuana and retail marijuana products. So that would take it from 3% to a total of 7% if passed by the voters. Those items would be used and dedicated to fund some of our public services, public safety services in and around the city. Some of those ideas relate to kind of mental health crisis response. As you know, currently the city of Littleton partners with All Health in terms of a co-responder program that we've expanded, or I think we're going to expand a little bit. Maybe we expanded a little bit this last year. To provide those crisis intervention services, because as Chief Stevens would speak to, they're good short-term kind of solution finders, but police are not good long-term solution providers. So some of the ideas that we've spent or we've developed are going towards some of those proactive safety programs. So we've had increased police down in our downtown areas, something that we had heard from some of the retailers down there, as well as homelessness assistance. or homelessness prevention assistance is one of the ideas in which these monies would be dedicated towards. And so the city estimates that we'll probably receive, in conjunction with the expanded hours that city council already approved for some of these retailers, approximately $650,000 a year that can be used to fund those. So that is one coming on the ballot just from the city. And then we run into three kind of Tabor issues or debursing ballot issues. And so one of the issues, they're all the same. So Tabor was passed back in 1992. And essentially, although they call it a spending limitation, it's really a revenue limitation. And basically what it controls is the growth of government by way of a formula associated with how much money did you generate the previous year, and then you add in costs for inflation, and then you add in costs for population growth, and then you get a number. And then if you go over that number, you are required to rebate, refund that money back to the taxpayers. And that refunding can be done in a variety of ways, from direct checks that get sent back to you, to credits that could be applied towards future bills depending on what is going on. So what a lot of counties, and specifically we'll talk about two of the counties that are going to be doing this, have done is they have gone to their voters and done what is called a debrucing ballot measure. Essentially what that is it asks the voters, hey, if we go over on these revenues, can we keep them? And can we spend those monies on whatever we want to use it for? And so most of the counties have actually gone through this process. Most of the counties have actually approved it. I think there's 51 out of the 64 counties have gone through and passed what we call a debrucing ballot issue. Two of the counties that actually have not are within our jurisdiction, or within their jurisdiction, depending on how you want to look at it. So Arapahoe County and Jefferson County both have never debruced. And what that has led to, and they've tried, has been needing to refund monies every year back to their citizens. So the first one that we'll deal with will be Arapahoe County ballot issue 1A. What Arapahoe County, much like Jefferson County, has said is they have a lot of deferred maintenance issues. What they have told us and what they have told their citizens is that they have not been able to collect the full amount of their property tax, which was agreed to by the voters, approved by the voters, in over 10 years. And so what they're estimating, what Arapahoe County estimates, is that they've only been able to collect about 70% of the property tax revenues, because then they run into that Tabor revenue limit, which requires them to refund those monies. So in an effort to address all the deferred maintenance costs, as well as the growing population needs that are going on within that city, particularly to the eastern part of that, the eastern part of that county, they're asking the voters to allow them to collect that excess revenue. They estimate that for 2024, that they'll have to, they're in line to have to refund money or make cuts. For 2025, they're in line to have to make a cut to a lot of the core services that they project to be around $35–40 million. So not only are they going to have to refund some monies, but they're also looking to actually cut services. So that's one of the issues that Arapahoe County is putting, that our citizens that are in Arapahoe County will get. The same thing goes for Jefferson County. Jefferson County has tried a couple times recently to debruce, and it has failed. And every year Jefferson County has been struggling with cutting costs. In the news have been a lot of cuts to their sheriff's department, a lot of cutbacks to the Jefferson County Jail, and they estimate they have the similar situation that that Arapahoe County has, and that they have tons of deferred maintenance that's going on throughout their county, road projects that need to get done. They're also looking to pass the same sort of measure, which is 1A, to debruce and allow for them to collect excess revenues. The The fourth one that we'll talk about, third Bruce matter, is RTD. This is RTD ballot issue 7A. And RTD, when it was formed, it had kind of an exemption to Tabor. And that exemption actually expires at the end of this year, which means they will then have a revenue cap, which means that they are projecting that they're going to be over said revenue cap, which will mean that they will have to refund in some fashion 10% of its monies. So for those of us who've been familiar with the plight of RTD in terms of their service cuts that they've had, the difficulty of retaining drivers and fleet persons throughout their organization, the thought of having to give back or refund 10% of their monies is a pretty big deal for them. And so they're going with ballot issue 7A. And I think those are really the four ballot issues that we're asking whether or not council has interest in adopting resolutions in support of. So real quick, the Fair Campaign Practice Act says that once you've referred a ballot issue, or once one has been put on the ballot, that council can take a position, and that position is normally done through a resolution of support or a resolution in opposition. And so what we're here for tonight is to get some guidance from city council, whether or not they're in favor of any of these, whether or not they would like for us to come back probably next week with resolutions in support or opposition or nothing. Or if there's another ballot issue out there that you want to talk about.
Not for judge.
I would say the Jefferson County one was kind of new on the table there because of, we've been focused on that, Arapahoe County, because that's kind of where 95% of our constituents live, and so it was like, oh, when they did that, it's more of an equity thing. If we're gonna, personally want to support Arapahoe County's, might as well support Jefferson County to help support our partner governments in their pursuit of providing services.
I feel like I've seen a thorough presentation from Arapahoe County about how much that will impact each home. It's comparable, I assume, for Jeffco?
It should be, and I think kind of the estimates is, and I don't know what Arapahoe County's numbers have shared, is probably about $50 is what the impact would be on each home by doing that. I may be getting that confused with the other special session.
They shared two different ways, but it was very minimal, yeah.
It's a
I
pretty
assume it's
minimal amount.
As far as individual refunds, yeah.
And then I don't
It's
actually
like
know how the
$30.
RTD one works.
RTD doesn't know how it's gonna work because it's sales tax, and so they don't know how to refund sales tax. So it
Yeah,
would be, they try to figure something out there, but
Most
RTD also
likely-
presented at Dr. Cog about this as well, and to your point, that they don't actually know what they're gonna do, and it could come in the form of, literal checks being mailed at an enormous expense, or it could be something in terms of like, ticket, cost deferment, there's a bunch of ways to go about it, but they haven't landed on one.
I will say the cost of cutting checks, and I believe the city of Littleton actually had to do it once. It was actually almost as expensive to cut the checks as it was
Yeah.
to
write
have
the
cut
check
that
to
money.
mail the check, everything, yeah. And RTD, I know that they don't have a whole lot of good will in the community with the services and everything they're providing, but, having them provide better services with less money doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, and this is money it's already approved to collect, it's just the fact that they're having this new Tabor cap, not new, but a Tabor cap limit exemption expiring, so.
Metro Mayors has already
Metro Mayors has already supported it.
supported it,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And Dr. Cog is gonna be taking it up for a position to put it up for a vote for a position in support or against on October 2nd, so.
I can't imagine, I feel like a lot of our constituents would depend on RTD, and a lot of our constituents would like RTD to provide better services, and I agree with what you said, Kyle. I can't imagine that we would get better services with less revenue, so the RTD one feels very important to to really a lot of our development plans that we're putting in place already, and so I support it, and then Arapahoe County, I think, has made a very good case, and they're very important to the services we provide, particularly around homelessness and mental health care, and so that feels very important to our situation. I understand Jeffco's really only a small part of our city, but I have sympathy for their situation, so. And as far as Arapahoe County goes, they considered raising sales tax, which would have been competitive with our revenue streams. And so I'm grateful that they decided to go for the de-Bruce as opposed to the sales tax. So I feel good about all of these, supporting all of these.
Me too. I was asked weeks ago why we weren't yet publicly supporting RTD, so.
Yeah, what took us so
Better
long?
than Robert.
Huh?
Now you
I
say
said,
to
couldn't have
the
said any
speaker.
better than Robert.
Oh, thank you.
So I think, Arapahoe County's done a great job of explaining their position and I'm in favor of all four.
So have all 4 resolutions of support for those 4.
We'll bring those forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Speaking of which, when are we gonna see a resolution for approval voting?
Not a resolution.
I mean,
A
request
A letter?
for-
direction was provided to create a letter.
Yeah, we have them right here.
Well, it's not on the agenda.
Oh, sorry. I'll email you.
Frank pay you to ask that
During
Right
city
question?
now.
attorney comments, I'll address that.
City manager, any update? Reports?
No report, Mayor.
How's Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh was good. A lot of good topics. A lot of folks, I'd say if there was one a big theme, it was AI this year and how fast it's coming and the kinds of policy frameworks folks are starting to talk about. So that was a big theme, and then a lot of the other follow-ups on environmental initiatives and some budgeting stuff, and so this was good.
I wonder if Alan Iverson's getting any residuals on that.
What'd you say?
So I wonder if Alan Iverson's getting any residuals on the turn to AIs.
No, I'm confident he's not.
City attorney, any?
Yeah, I've heard some interest in when the letter to our General Assembly about alternative voting methods will be coming to council, and I'm anticipating probably in a couple weeks.
Anything else?
No, we had the CML attorney section got together on Friday and Saturday down in Colorado Springs, lots of legal stuff. So, nothing to report.
And I'll just say that we had a reception for Judge Huffine, who is her last day in court tomorrow, and then final day on the 30th. So just want to thank her for all of her service, and Judge Lessman will start next week.
She's on.
She started
Today?
Well,
yesterday.
okay,
Yesterday.
sorry, okay, well.
So she'll start
Why are we
judging.
paying for 2 judges, right? It's like-
Loretta, be your first case.
To be fair, Loretta
I'm trying
was,
to be your first case.
I already had to make the point that I've never been on probation. I
Dive
don't
into this
know why they asked me
To
that.
kind of show her the ropes and how we process things, so we thank her for making herself available.
You know?
What?
Done?
We're adjourned.